Good evening, everyone. This is the Zoning Board of Appeals, January 8th, 2020. We've got a two-part agenda. We've got 156 minutes. An incorrect date. Could I just have a motion to approve? All in favor? '11th meeting. No. All in favor? That's all four of us. And that is it.
So the footprint of the building is remaining the same. The existing building was built in that rear setback. The footprint not the yard street, so the building has a very odd position where setback is essentially side yard setback. I presented a series of drawings that show all vertical. The footprint of the building remains the
Driving down the block, the house faces Walgrove.
correct.
Follows the rear yard.
Transwell is technically the would appear, but it does have fairly standard lots. It's rotated.
So that you're proposing.
That's always correct.
Ask why is positioned the way it is?
Shifted slightly, also being centered because of the location of an existing at the connection to the living room in that location, and by extending it in that current orientation, being shifted a little. It has a connection to the space behind the house as well to the side yard. Positioning it of all of these.
Could you come show me that?
So the-
Because it's here. And I guess why wasn't it here?
The intention was to have a visual connection to the space behind the house as well. If you look at the survey on this front page here,
Right.
there's a space that's used behind the house, which is technically a side yard.
Okay.
And there's the side yard, which is technically the front
Front
yard.
yard.
So by positioning it slightly shifted, it's able to interact with both of those spaces.
You open it to the patio as
Exactly.
opposed to just opening it out
Correct.
out this way. Yeah. Application? Guys, are we all good?
Motion to close the hearing.
Second?
Motion to move the requested variance for 65 Walgrove.
In accordance with the plan submitted.
Yep.
Well, good luck. All in favor?
favor.
Thank you.
That's unanimous. Okay, next up, Mr. Steinschneider. 156 Palisade. And this is an application to construct a new multifamily building, and 6 variances as laid out.
First, let me introduce myself.
Yes, indeed.
From Gotham Design, Community Development, working for the purchase of this property. Michael Lang is here. He is one of the principals in this. The existing Thank you so much. Happy New Year. Main Street there, Spears Palisade Street, so the park. Coming down. There is the MDR2 zoning district, and a little bit. This is from the vision plan, which shows the downtown. Old Town. For this, the number one to be a place where area that this apartment is very positive. It's about wide, and most of the parcels, or many of the parcels on this are 40 feet. Palisades, I'll refer to this, which are kind of with the types of buildings that are on this street, the type of use. When the land use committee really didn't do actually what was appropriate on Palisade Street. So kind of at the last minute, the MDR2 zone was created. The dimensional standard. The most significant change that was made between MDR1 and MDR2 was down, and the MDR1 zoning standards were copied. So I'll get is set up transitional district in the same way that the zoning district was set up as transitional. We used to have the DT was set these the standards in the DTR. It's also 3 stories, very similar to what's permitted in the MDR2 zone. Minimum of 2 is 10 instead of 20, and the site coverage are 60% for buildings and 80% for impervious surface that we put together that does the comparison of the MDR1, MDR2, DT, and then what we've proposed. So here you've got the 675 square feet. We would be entitled density-wise to having 10 to 11 residential units, but there's also a condition in the code that says we can't have a building for more than 8 units. Of us having 8 units in this building, which just means that we're averaging 1,084 square feet. Proposed a 46.68% site coverage, which is more than the 27% that's permitted. In surface, we're asking for 62.87%, where 54% is permitted. Downtown, again, is 80% on that. And if you look at the prevailing block, which often, when somebody has a large enough site, paved driveway coming back, the parking in the back, some of those actually get over 80% in impervious surface. Again, we're proposing 62.87%. That gives you all the side yard setbacks, that calculates the site coverages, and shows what the context limit area is of the properties that are contiguous. So if we look at this and say, what are the prevailing, the side yard setback in this zone is retaining what we want to do, we really need to increase that to 6 feet. So we'd have 1 foot bigger inside. Side is a driveway where we've got approximately 17 feet. So we're actually around 22 feet of combined, so we're greater than list. So quickly to move you through the neighborhood, some photographs, which is a good size, nice house. This is the property line right here that separates between that house and this is the existing house, which will be coming down. That's a photo of that house. Space between that house. This house, with the neighboring house, is almost on the property line. It's about a 2-foot setback. This is the side that we're proposing having the driveway on, so the actual separation between the buildings would be generous. As we go down the block, you can see that most of the houses on, or most of the buildings on the street are very tightly configured. When you do have extra space, what they've done is they've pushed the house to one side and used both side yards to be able to get a driveway on to go back to parking in the back.
There's no parking in the back there.
There's no parking on that street?
There's no parking in that driveway. The driveway ends
Okay.
and then there's the backyard.
Okay.
Sorry.
I was thrown by the car.
You see the white gate in the
Yeah.
back of the car? That,
Yeah.
and then behind that's all yard.
Okay. Tight side yards here as we go down the block. This, I don't know if there's parking behind there. I always thought that there was. Maybe
No,
that's just.
I'm not sure.
Okay, so, again, a building that from property line to property line is effectively paved. This building goes all the way back almost to the rear lot line. This is a good-sized building in this neighborhood. My understanding is this is on the property line on both sides. This driveway is shared to give parking back to behind this building as well as behind that building. And then just some other buildings on that same side of the street. This is going up the other side of the street. This was actually the model building when we were talking about creating, or when the land use committee was talking about creating the MDR zone, MDR2 zone. This was the model that was used of why it would be necessary to do something different. This is a 3-story building. MDR1 only allows 2.5 stories. It has 2 units on a floor, so 6 units on a 5,000 square foot lot, and that was rounded off to 800 square feet per unit. On the inside of this, it has about a 6-foot side yard. Here, it actually turns a corner, it's about 12 feet. In the front, it's, a couple of feet, it's relatively tight. No parking on site for that. As you go up that side of the street, you see similar situations. These lots are actually pretty interesting, that they're very deep. They're about 250 feet deep. And they go back to, they're being used right now for equipment storage and things like that. So, again, more buildings across the street which show that they fit most of the site. And then, of course, our new parking lot, which is up in the corner. This is the plan that we showed to the planning board on November 7th. What this plan had was a entrance for cars in the middle of the building. So you'd drive into the basement of this building and you'd have 8 parking spaces. It had an entrance on the side that came in for pedestrians, and then it had 5-foot side yards on both sides. The planning board was not a fan of that. They asked us to consider a couple of changes, reduce the width of the building, eliminate the garage door facing the street, and consider providing parking in the rear yard via a driveway on the south side of the building. We took another look at the site, and I think it would really be unfortunate to create parking in that backyard. Not easy to do either, because there's actually about a 10-foot change of level between the street and that backyard. So keeping this backyard was something we figured was a better thing to do. And what we did is we eliminated the cars coming in on the front by doing the driveway on the side. So you'd be able to come in, and then we have the 8 parking spaces in the basement of the building. It's something that you see on the front, but it's buried on the other 2 sides, and it meets the standards for not being a story. These are just floor plans showing a total of 8 units. There's 4 small units on the first floor, and then 2 floors with 2 units on each one. And then we've got a small walkout area on the upper deck where you can stand and watch the fireworks. The building kind of fits in to the site, we think, in a fairly good way. Here's an elevation that shows the relationship on the street. So you see that corner building, the space between that building and the proposed building, then the driveway and the space between that building and the neighbor to its south. We think that's the fairest way to kind of balance out the space and how that works. And it's approximately, I mean, the space between this building and the existing building is actually more than is there now, although this is obviously a taller building than the existing. As we noted earlier, we need 6 variances for this. We need to reduce the side yard on the north side from 10 feet to 6 feet. We need to reduce the front yard from 20 feet to 5, unless we're allowed to use prevailing, and I'm not sure about that. If we're allowed to use prevailing, the prevailing in the context zone is 7.8 feet, which makes it significantly less. More significant is increasing the building coverage from 27 to 46.68 square percent, and increasing the site coverage from 54 to 62.87. Again, these numbers fit in what is current in the neighborhood. We also need a variance to increase the eave height from the maximum of 28 in the code to 23 feet, although we may be able to find some ways of designing that to eliminate the need for that. And I'm not sure, I know it's listed as one of the variances, but on-site parking, we're providing 8 spaces where 11 are required, and this is the location where I think we're allowed to have the alternative parking standards, pilots, as well as,
That, number 6 could be looked at by the planning board.
right. So we may need a variance for it unless the planning board felt that they would prefer to grant pileups. If we get a variance, not giving an opinion on anything here, but a variance would mean that there'd be no charge for those parking spaces. If we got pileups, we'd have to pay for them. Okay, cool. Okay, so here is a Google Earth view of the building in place as it's proposed, fitting in from a couple of different points of view. This is the existing building, kind of with lines on it and stuff so that it fits into our context. We actually have to do the drawing to drop it in. Looking up the street from this view, and then we've got a SketchUp model that we've done. This is the proposed building, this is the rear yard, this is the building on the corner, the building next door, and then a couple of shots of how the massing fits in with this being the new building, building on the corner, building next door, other buildings going down the street, and seeing that from a couple of viewpoints. That's looking up the street from the south. This is something that comes from the vision plan, and in the recommendations, one of the things that is proposed for Old Town is legalizing housing and apartments in the downtown area contingent on payments in lieu of parking, specifically suggesting that that is something that will be done, and most important, encouraging a significant increase in the number of residential units in Old Town. That's something that was decided that was desirable, and I think I have run out of things to show you. Do you have any questions?
Sure. Who would like to begin?
Go to it.
So Patty, so yesterday, I walked the east side of Palisades from the corner up to the apartment building you showed particularly, because I thought that was the immediate zone. And in looking at it, some of the variances weren't problematic to me, because everything's at the street line. There's a great diversity about what happens in the rear of the building. Some houses or buildings go pretty close to the rear, some have nice yards. But there is a couple of things that are troubling in the application to me. And the main one is the coverage. When you walk that block, there is a broken rhythm. There's space between the houses, so the overall sense of mass, like you just showed,
Yeah.
the overall sense of mass isn't monolithic block. And my concern with this, based on the coverage numbers, and even based on the image you showed, is that building is gonna read as a much bigger block on the block. And he's thinking that house as a block. It's a much bigger block. And it might overpower some of the others. Somewhat similar to some of the problem buildings we have approved in the past, where the overall massing of what we approved appeared okay almost when you looked at it on the drawing. But when it was built, this one on, took down Main Street that I'm thinking of, it just is too big a building for the site. And that's my concern with what you've proposed so far.
The only comment I'd have, just to make sure that we're understanding it right, we've set back the two sides of this so that what you're actually seeing on the street line is a building that is about the same width as the other buildings that are on the street. So you've got the main portion of the building in the center, and then you've got decks on the sides. So we've specifically done that to soften that sense of the width. And of course, when you look at the spaces that are between these buildings, it's until you get down closer to, say, 75 Main, they are the widest spaces that you find on the street.
Yeah, but if you look at your chart even, you look at building coverage and lot coverage going from 164 Palisade to 123 Palisade. This is you're covering much more of the lot. And when you showed your image, if you look at that, look at those. That's what that block looks like. It looks like that, it looks like the building next to it, it looks like the building to the right. And the building you're proposing is a much, much larger building.
It's a double lot.
It's a double building, but it's a double building.
It's a double lot, but you have extra coverage on the
Right.
lot.
Double lot.
Well,
You know,
yeah,
Pat,
Yeah,
on the big table that you gave us, it includes 99 Cedar Street, which is far and away the largest lot. Excluding that, because it's not on Palisade,
right.
you've got the largest, the second largest building area, square footage of the building.
Right.
You've got the second largest building coverage.
And is it also second largest parcel?
No, I'm talking percentage.
Okay.
Percentage. You know, so you're using, you know, this is in a sense a development, you know, and I don't think this board has any issues with some of the setbacks that you're talking about. But this is a project which obviously does not fit in. You know, and I think in terms of mass,
If there was one variance and you look to other conditions on the street to justify that variance, that would be one thing, but I think the way I'm looking at this, or the way I see it, is that you're saying, look at the street, there are a number of buildings that have very little front yard setbacks, so permit our front yard setback, and there are very few that have side yard setbacks, so permit the side yard, and there are very few that have the rear yard setback, so permit that, and there are very few that have, permeability coverage or overall lot coverage, and so yours is an aggregation of all of that, and so it becomes a massive building in terms of volume. That would be an interesting study if you actually calculated cubic feet for all the buildings, and I think you'd see.
Maybe we should do that.
I think therein lies that it would be, I think, rather significantly out of character with the rest of the neighborhood. I don't think we find that many buildings.
Larger than most of the other buildings, but again, partially because it's the larger lot. Mr. Hoffman, when you were talking about coverages, I'm looking at, there's 64, there's 43,
you're proposing 46,
Right.
46.6. There's 78 that's higher. And what else is higher than you? None.
well, no,
78%.
122 is 43, 74.
On that property.
The actual size is larger, but it's, if you look, if what we had was a.
Pat, you can
We're just
have a
talking building
larger
code.
building on a larger lot.
But and you also have to remember that 78% is on a 4,800-foot lot. Your lot is twice the size,
Right.
so your overage is even more amplified in terms of visual appearance.
I think I understand what you're saying, but I don't know how to, well, I mean, if somebody has a parcel that's 8,675 square feet,
Right.
I mean, when I look at what that massing does in terms of elevation, if I look at this coming out, fronting on it, the width being that, the space, I realize this building is larger than many of the other buildings, but it's proportionally consistent. And I think that that's something that has to be considered in this kind of. So, John, you mentioned the rear yard, we're actually 41 feet in the rear yard, so we're okay with that.
Fair enough, but you know, when it's 6 variances, there's not a lot that's left unrequested in a way.
Well, Of the
It's,
6, I think our issue is really with 2, if I'm understanding correctly what you guys are saying. In other words, the side yards, the front yard setback, those don't really factor into the concern that you're expressing. It's the site coverage, which is the one that becomes the issue.
that may be others, I'm not sure that's
Okay?
my concern.
That's how
Have a
I
side
think it's an
yard.
aggregation of
I
everything.
mean, that block, between each house, there is a separation, there is a space.
Right, and
And
we've
some
got-
of, but I guess the point I started with is that there isn't, and I think John picked up on it, there isn't a uniform look on the east side of Palisade. The buildings differ in terms of how they use their property. It's just that this particular, as John has put it, is taking the most aggressive stance of all of the other properties and putting it in one location.
Yeah. What's beautiful about this neighborhood, I think that the neighborhood needs to set the tone for the neighborhood going forward. And what's really beautiful about this neighborhood is that there is an inconsistency to it, which is kind of nice. And there's a variety to it, and you can see through the buildings. You can
Right.
constantly see through the buildings. And so I think the neighborhood is determined and defined by significantly more than the street front, right? These people in their homes, they're in their backyards, they're in their side yards, they're all over the place. It's 360, and there's a feel to that, and this is a rather massive building. And you have a few of those, and those are, those contribute. But when you start to build more and more and more and more of those, and you say that should set the tone for all the development in the neighborhood, because that's what the vision plan is saying, then it's in short order, it becomes a different
The
neighborhood.
vision plan didn't address the issue that we're talking about. What it does is it says there's a need for an increase in the number of residential units. But it didn't give me anything that says, therefore, I should be entitled to do something. But I also don't think it puts any restriction on it that says, you can't do something that fits in to this kind of a texture. I mean, if we're different, it's because we have more space on the sides of the building than the others do.
Okay.
We actually, again, proportionately, if we use this building as somewhat of a model for it, the side yard here, the side yard there are much smaller proportionately than what we're proposing
Patty, I've been doing this
for a long time.
for more than 2 decades, most of it with the chairman sitting next to me. And if I think back at what we've done well, what we've done well is when we've allowed there to be sight lines and views between buildings, and we've reduced bulk. What we've done poorly, and I regret certain decisions, is when we've allowed the mass and the volume of a building to be greater than its neighbors. And, lessons learned. I'm not, personally, I would find it difficult to approve something that reflected my negative lessons learned. And it's just an opinion.
No, and I appreciate that, and I understand that.
And realize that the charge that we have, is to grant the minimum variances required. And seemingly, a lot fewer variances or a lot less severe variances could be requested to build an attractive building on this property.
I don't disagree. I do think what we're proposing in terms of the size of the units are appropriate given the street.
Well, I think that I'm not having a problem with the size of the units.
But if I've got 8 units that that are those sizes, I've got a building that's a certain size.
So
Well,
let me add-
maybe, I think your 8 is perhaps the wrong number. You know, there's no reason why you should be stuck at 8.
Patty, before we open it up to the public, do you have any interest in revisiting your plans and coming back?
Of course I do, as I always have.
I think you've heard the sentiment of, at least,
I've
a
heard
number
this-
of the members of the
Yeah,
board,
but
which I would
Joseph, I'm
echo.
waiting for Joseph. to
I
jump
would echo.
Hope springs eternal.
What did Churchill say? Churchill's statement, what was it? Like, something about, you know, success is being able to move from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. So, you know, obviously, our goal is to try and find a solution. And I appreciate the information you gave, but I don't, I wish I could say right now, geez, you know, what you're saying is is very similar to some other idea we had. It's not right now. But that doesn't mean we can't take a look. Obviously, we're also, looking for the planning board to be dealing with some things on this. I have no indication that they're going to be different than your person, you know, how you're approaching it. So I'm not saying you guys are here, they're there, absolutely not. But it is something that they're considering, what are the requirements that should be in the MDRG zone? They're actually looking at, and obviously, that would be the easiest solution, is to establish those and say, okay, obviously, 27%, you know, if you take a look at that building, that model building, and you say, I got 3 stories, I got 6 units, I got 2 units on the floor, if I have, each unit's about 1,200 square feet, I got 2,400 square feet, I got some common area, let's say I'm around 2,800 square feet of my footprint, on my 5,000 square foot lot, 56% of the site. So that model for what is on this street is, and one of the disadvantages we have, I don't think we can go out and start representing, we're measuring all the buildings, so we're working from the town of Greenbush.
Right, and that's absolutely fine.
So I think there's, you know, some of those that say they're 13%, but they go property line to property line, you know, they might not be exactly right. And maybe that's something we need to confirm better, but I don't perceive that your response is on mathematical issues. As, you know, Bruce expressed it, it's from walking it and seeing it. And so what the issue is how do we come up with something that feels like it is softer, of a smaller dimension, that doesn't feel like it's overwhelming? I don't want to play games with it, but I'm wondering if the building appeared to be not one single structure, but, I mean, obviously the foundation to accommodate the parking, I think this is a place we want to have parking on site. We can't have a convoluted base, but maybe we can do something different with the way the massing works, so that what you read is more like what you're seeing with some of these, where, you know, if these were on the same, in fact, up this block, I'm not sure which one it is. I think it might be this property. I think these are both on one parcel. So it's kind of, you know, I'm not suggesting that this, you know, if we do 2
Right.
very different looking buildings, it would work,
Well-
but maybe that's something we can look at as a way of informing us.
Pat, I think you've gotten a good sense of where we are.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure we are the ideal place for you to be starting this,
third choice.
to be starting this project. You know, in that, you know, you're talking about changing the look of the building. Number one, we're not the best judge of that, but more importantly, it has to get through the Architectural Review Board.
Right.
And, you know, I think variances here we are sympathetic with, and there are variances that we think are extremely difficult,
That you're concerned about. Yeah.
that we're concerned about. You know, obviously, the better architectural structure that you present, you know, I think
And in that context.
the better we're going to view these, you
I'd
know,
like to be
buildings.
looking at plans that are similar to what you're kind of going with the planning board, rather than a proposal that may then change drastically, improve variances that may not be needed. So
Yeah, in many of the communities that we work, Hastings,
I'm
Irving,
familiar with
these
that.
examples, we get it resolved with the planning board before we come to the zoning board. This is one that I think it would make sense if we were doing that, but the village adopts has always handled it the reverse path. But
understood.
there's no reason that we can't, since we are before the planning board, see where we go with that, and then see if we come up with something that they think is a direction that works, and then come back and show that to you and see if that's better. And I have no objection going to the architectural review board and getting their input on it as well.
It's iterative with us in the planning board on it. And I think it is not a bad use of your time to get a sense as to what kind of variances we would be more favorable or less favorable to. So that as you work with the planning and architectural review board, you at least have in mind that developing a beautiful building that we're not gonna give you the variances for isn't productive use of your time, or vice versa.
Yeah, I don't see any way that we're gonna get significantly smaller in our coverage, but I also didn't hear, again, I didn't hear a concern with mathematics sometimes. Even this board, we've talked about how much of a percentage over it is, and that factors in because that's like a scale thing of how much of a variance you're seeking. I think the reaction here is more on the, how you feel this building would fit in or not fit in with the context of the neighborhood. That's a different.
Well, I'll disavow you of that.
Yeah, you didn't, you're not listening well.
I don't agree with that. I think that one of the major concerns that I have with the building is just its size and its mass, and it's pushing the limits on on 4 of the 5 sides, right? You know, it's up, it's left, it's right, it's front,
Well, it's
exists
actually,
back. So,
it's three.
well, no, you have a front
Two
yard and
sides.
The rear is okay.
the rear is okay.
And so is our total side yard coverage, and our south side coverage, our setback is much bigger than is required.
Well, we have anyway, the point is we have a side
We have one
yard, we have
side
front
yard, one
yard, we have
front
lot coverage, we have height.
Right.
No height.
Yes,
Oh, I-
yes,
E,
height.
I
Yeah.
E, But I think, as I said, I think that gets designed out. I mean, I'd rather.
Design it out then.
I don't know. I
You
mean,
know,
we can't be sour on this plan because of the design of the building and aesthetically. Do I think breaking up the building would help in terms of the development? Yeah, I do, frankly, but that's not our purview. But it's about the mass. It's about the mass.
Which is I'm using as, I'm interpreting that as what I actually see. Not, it was 10 foot by 10 foot, and I told you it was 10,000 square feet inside. What would you care? It's still a 10 by 10 by 10 box.
In a way, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that building coverage isn't critical to our decision.
Of course.
You know, you're asking for almost 47% lot coverage. The average is 31.56.
Right.
And
on
in
the
fun
street,
with, and Patty, in
If
fun
you
with
go to the
numbers.
context area.
That's looking at all the buildings.
Right.
That's next.
We have to define the context differently because it limits the distance. So there's two, there's the street, which we gave you, because I.
Okay, and you know, your building area is the largest on the block. Excuse me, the second largest. 95 Palisade is larger.
Yeah, and I think, well, there are a couple there that are in the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
No. No.
I mean, 122?
2,100 square feet.
You use the contextual area when we go to contextual limits, when you get out of prescriptive. But when you're looking for variances that are not against contextual, you're looking at the zone.
Which is what I've done.
Right.
Yeah.
The front setback, not the frontage. That's the actual area comes into play. The height, the side yards, all of those are.
It seems like that's something that would be smart to do.
Well, you are here, and as the board has these things tomorrow night, but I thought it important that, you know, our code kind of encourages, combined meetings or joint meetings. We don't often get a chance to do that because people's schedules and everything, but for this board to give some sort of guidance to the planning board as to what variances you deem de minimis and what are very important that you would not agree to, gives them some guidance as how they help him design this building. So some comments here would help the planning board, and I think,
Reduce the mass.
Yeah,
I don't think we're in a position yet, based on what's been presented to us, to make specific comments as to specific variants.
Yeah.
Unless others disagree. I say
Reduce
the
the
overall
mass.
comment is reduce the mass.
that's a comment, that's,
yeah, I think
Helps.
number two, the front yard setback, I don't think people have any issue with that.
Yeah, I'm not concerned
Yeah.
with that as much as the overall mass.
But this is huge.
Well, the two things are, well, no, you've already said the one you don't have a big issue with. Parking, I don't think is an issue. I think those two, that's 2 out of 6. The height, we can probably adjust out, so we don't have that, that's 3 out of the 6. And at that point, I'd ask the easier one, which is, given the fact that we've got a large side yard on the neighboring parcel, is 6 feet instead of 10 feet, on a street where it's often 2 or 3 feet, do you have an issue with the 6 feet? I mean, is that a deal breaker for you guys of considering, development of the site? Just that one item.
Just speaking for myself.
Sure.
The 2 deal breakers is the one we've said all along, the mass is too large, and the other deal breaker would be if the building becomes too high.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's a block in which the
Right
typical
now,
building
we're-
is 3
we're
stories.
compliant. So, that's not an issue with
If-
the height.
I would-
Other than the,
I would go so far as to say that if you built this completely compliant with the zoning code, all the right setbacks, and you maxed out the envelope, it would still be not a great building for this location. If you came back and said, I can make it a better building in terms of the massing and fitting it in with the neighborhood if I'm allowed to get a few variances, I think that's a better argument, in my opinion. Because you could not come back here and you could just max it out. And I just think it would be the wrong building
Yeah.
for the neighborhood. So
Yeah,
I
we don't
think,
need to
for
follow
me,
that.
in my opinion, that would be the right tack to take. And I'll tack on to that. I think not a walking problem, and there is a parking problem. And I think if you go back to the vision plan, they specifically tie the pilot program to the legalization of illegal apartments, right? So I think if you have an opportunity to build a new development and you have the opportunity to fit that need it. There are a whole bunch of them, I'm sure, along that street that are illegal and that they can never, and we should encourage that, because the other thing that the vision plan does say is, there's a historic nature to that and it should be encouraged, right? So these buildings that are there, they should be, as much as possible, we should be doing everything we can to encourage them to stay as opposed to being torn down and redeveloped.
right, which makes sense. I don't think we're far apart on that. The difference between the 8 and 11 is, I think it's good to have the additional parking. I personally feel 1 parking space per apartment in the downtown is good. I know they've changed the code recently to make it different, but I think there was a lot of thought that went into that. I thought that's what we really still should be. As many arguments as I would hear of saying there's a parking problem, I think it really is a walking problem. I don't know if you were quoting me back from my white paper, because that's exactly what I'm saying. I don't think we have a parking problem, I think we have a walking problem. I think we don't walk from where you park to where you're going enticing and attractive and safe and fun enough to get people to say that it's not a problem. If I'm going someplace that's got beautiful streets and they walk around on, I don't mind parking 2 or 3 blocks away.
I think the last traffic study, there's a parking problem.
No, actually, no, all of the parking studies.
Try parking there at night.
Don't say that.
Try parking at night.
Well, I know it's an issue,
Yeah.
and that's why they built the lot.
Anyway.
But I think I should respond to
Just as an aside, the other thing the lot did though, was improve the walkability of that area. Because the slope from, where the lot is to Main Street, to where, that I did redesign that, it's a much easier walk. So the walk, I agree with John, I don't think there's a walking problem.
Bruce, did you walk down those stairs? You know, they're not open yet.
No, but it's gonna be open.
Huh?
That's gonna be much easier, that's much better.
He did the virtual walk.
It's much better,
Okay.
it's much better,
When will we have those railings?
it's much better than the
I think that's-
slope used to be.
I
I got a
think what-
reserve comment.
I think that's when the pool opens.
So, I'm sure we're all enjoying this, but I think you've received the consensus, I think, of the board.
No, I-
Do you want to go
Yeah.
forward based on
Yeah.
this application, have you heard from the community, or do you want to
Oh, no, I think, I mean.
adjourn and come back another time?
I mean, I don't hold the power to adjourn, so I think people will come here tonight if they want to speak.
They should
that's their- it's up to
No, I'm
them.
saying, I think it'd be useful for you to hear from the community.
Who else would like to be heard in this application? If you'd come up to the microphone and give us your name and address for the record.
Ed Hennessy, I live at 80 Belvedere. Were built in the late 1890s, and they've been renovated, of course, but they're small. One's a single-family house, the other one's got 3 one-bedroom apartments. This building doesn't fit anywhere on this block. It doesn't match anything that we've got on the block. It is, as you said, it's too. And parking is a problem. I don't agree with Patty, I never have on parking. You can't have one parking space for an apartment, especially if you have 2 bedrooms. The good chances are you're gonna have 2 cars in there. If you go down to that street right now, there is no parking. There's gonna be at least 6 to 8 cars in that lot with the stickers on it that we took 4 years to get, just to get rid of the commuters off of that street. And, okay, during the day, we have some decent parking now. People can go out in the morning and come back and get a place to park. But at night, after 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night, there is no place to park. People come home from work and there is no place to park. They can't park in front of their buildings, they can't park close to their buildings. They're up in that lot by the end of the night. Sometime later, I don't know whether it's people who work in the restaurants or where they are, but some spaces will open up, but generally, that street is jammed. You can't do it. They're proposing another big building they're gonna put on Cedar Street. And they, you can't get away with saying, I'm gonna give you, a pilot program and pay for parking that's not there. It's still not there, and the people in this town can't park. On a Friday night or a Saturday night, you drive through Cedar Street, Main Street, after 6 or 7 o'clock, and you're gonna find 6 or 7 cars double parked with their flashes on so that people can run in and get their takeout food. Doesn't attract anybody to get into it and wanna walk up that hill, even with the new stairs going in. So, they have a right to build a building here, yes. But not asking for the variances they're asking for, and a building doesn't fit the rest of the neighborhood. It doesn't look like anything that's there. It just doesn't fit. We don't need something that large, and I actually think they got the cart before the horse. I don't think they should have been to the zoning board before they actually got approval of what they're actually gonna build there. Tomorrow night is a pre-submission into the planning board. We're starting in the wrong direction. Looking for approvals of something that you haven't to build yet. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Denise Wooden. I live at 154 Palisade, which is that lovely green house with the front porch right next door to the proposed project. I wanted to first thank the board for your comments and your concerns tonight. I'm just so grateful that you recognize that Palisade Street is unique, and it may not be the prettiest street in Doxbury, but it's our street, and it's mostly residential, and I've lived there for nearly 12 years, and I really appreciate the variety of buildings there. Some of them aren't very attractive, some of them are, but there is a great variety. And to go in that direction of the largest building on the street, it would just ruin the character of our concerns written down, I think. As I mentioned, I've lived at 154 Palisade Street for nearly 12 years on the third floor apartment. The development of the size proposed here will negatively impact my quality of life and the quality of life of my fellow tenants. My biggest concern relates to parking. There is not enough street parking for the current residents of Palisade Street. The board should not count on new residents being able to park on the street, which I think, Patty's not proposing that, he's proposing a garage underneath. However, a parking garage under the proposed building brings its own issues for residents of 154, including the noise and light pollution from cars coming and going, the garage door opening and closing, and traffic very close to the side of our building where there is currently none. As bad as this could be, a parking lot in back of the house would be far worse. And I understand that's not being proposed tonight, but I just want to put this to rest because it would be very bad. One of the best features of this property, 156, is a beautiful back and side yard. Because my front windows overlook two parking lots, Mercy College and 99 Cedar, I treasure the green space next door, which is visible from my side and back windows. With the construction of the 99 Cedar lot, Palisade Street lost numerous trees. To lose more green space and to look out at yet another parking lot is absolutely intolerable. The best solution for the neighborhood would be to allow the new residents apartment looks at the rooftop and yard of 156, giving us ample sunlight on the northern side. With a taller building so close to our own, we will have less sunlight in our living room and in my daughter's bedroom. There is also the issue of privacy with new apartments at the same level as ours. And I would add that if they have those terraces, like where are people going to be sitting on their terraces looking into our windows? As I mentioned earlier, I'm concerned about the loss of green space at 156 Palisade, especially the flowering tree in the side yard and the forsythia bushes and tree in front of the house. The village does not have a good track record in replacing trees that have been destroyed for development. I urge the developers to preserve these neighborhood assets. If they must be destroyed, I ask for a binding commitment that they will be replaced by trees and greenery that equals or exceeds that which is lost. In addition to planting more street trees, the developers might consider a green roof. In closing, I would note that some people think that renters are by nature transient. This is not the case for me. 154 Palisade Street is my home. I have raised my daughter there and intend to stay in my apartment for the foreseeable future. I urge you to take my concerns and the concerns of my neighbors into account when considering this project.
Thank you. If you're not going to be at the planning board meeting tomorrow, you should submit that to them. Okay, good.
Steve Tilly, 87 Lockton Park. I'm around the corner. I'm not directly impacted, but I travel Palisade Street frequently. And, like the book about Main Street is almost right. Palisade Street is almost right. It's really a wonderful example of affordable housing at a nice density with the variation that you've noticed and that other people have noticed who talked about living there. I'm implicated in the vision plan and the zoning and any mistakes therein. And I think Patty's opening argument was an argument for changing zoning, which is not to be done at the zoning board. And I think he was very effective at kind of getting you into a negotiation about this site, and in a way about zoning. But I think that argument needs to be made at the Board of Trustees to consider, as they can reconsider, if there were mistakes made in the original zoning, but to rezone this part 6 variances, it's, it obviously the state standards are, it kind of blows away, the minimum variance and all self-creation, all that stuff. About, was that one of the village attorneys, doing just a copy clip of the other one, or was it intentional? And quite honestly, I don't remember. But like Mr. Gambos, I spent, part of 2 decades on the Architectural Review Board, and there is something on Palisade Street that is the thing that haunts me, which is the southwest corner of Riverside Place and Palisade Street. And I'm implicated in that, and I regret that decision, every time I drive home. And it's just way too big. It looms, it's ugly as sin. I don't know if it was somebody that I knew, there were a lot of considerations. I hadn't been on the board very long, a lot of excuses. But this seems to me is a mistake. That there are issues about the topography, the location, that also mitigate against that kind of density. For what looks like a half-story building, it may technically meet the code somehow, but if you count levels and you include that little half thing at the top, it really looks like 4.5 stories, which I think is part of the visual impression that's getting that, wow, again, aside from the mathematics. So I think that, really this thing should be playing out in another venue, and it's kind of inappropriate to come to you with something that needs that, that many corrections. So I agree with the sentiments that you've expressed, and thank you for your service. And like you, hope that we avoid mistakes that we've seen actually get built.
Thank you. And and this is being reviewed by the proper people to figure out what makes the most sense.
Right.
Okay. Anyone else? Pat, how would you like to proceed?
I'm going to leave it up to my attorney, who's made the presentation tonight. We're going to take another look at some things. I think we should play this for a while with the planning board. To see
Yeah.
where they want to take us, and I'd love to believe that we'll be back at the next meeting. Maybe there'll be something happens that we will be, but we'll
Yeah, I think we should adjourn him so that he does not have to come back next time, but can come back. But with the idea that this is really a project that you've got to work out between the planning board and the zoning board. And
absolutely understood,
Yeah.
and where I started on this, I think I mentioned you were my third choice. Where I first wanted to go.
no wonder you're having such bad luck here.
I wanted to go to the board of trustees first, to talk about the zone, and then I thought maybe the planning board. As I was saying earlier, Dobbs has a process where it often starts with the zoning board. But I think you've handled it in a good way tonight, which is to say, let's let's see what other people are thinking, what adjustments that makes, and see if that gets us to a place where we're closer to something that we were.
Well, then I think it's less about the zone than it is the appropriateness,
Sure.
you know, of this fitting in with the other buildings on the street. You know, and that's the key to getting a project through, I think.
I agree.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Move to close. All in favor?